was half debating whether to do a little dance, but I figured that my inferior dancing skills would best not be showcased in front of such a dignified audience. Well, today I am here to talk about my generation, but actually that song has been playing on my dad's car radio for many years now, The Who being one of his favorite bands. But it is actually a little funny that I'm talking about my generation. I'm 13 years old, and there's a song playing that's from the 1960s, I think, yeah. So, before I start talking about technology and kids and what other 13-year-olds are doing, I'm going to start by looking back on some generations past. So, let's start pretty much as early as I can remember studying about, which, okay, I studied earlier civilizations, but in the 1200s, I made some imaginary children, some hypothetical children, and found some photos that might be, give you an idea of what they might be doing in the 1200s, so maybe foraging for blackberries or playing outside. We moved later on to the 1800s, and there's probably some books to read, more children's books available. In the 1940s, maybe they're listening to Children's Hour on the radio. Late 1960s, possibly a color TV. 1980s, they would have a VCR. And in 2011, they're going over to each other's houses and watching YouTube videos, particularly the ones that their friends have been forwarding to them, like that ticklish penguin at the Cincinnati Zoo, or maybe Rebecca Black's Friday. These are some very popular videos in the United States. I'm not sure if they've traveled the globe quite yet. But while Catherine and Edward are hypothetical children that I've made up, I think that these scenarios are pretty realistic for their time periods. Today, we have so many channels and videos available that it might seem difficult to find a teenager in any developed country who doesn't have access to a whole wealth of information and entertainment online, myself included. We have all these YouTube clips, we have all these content sites, Wikipedia, and so young people like me are embracing the freedom to watch or read or listen to whatever we want, whenever we want. We don't have to wait for records to come out anymore. We can just check out an artist's latest music video release online. And so if you walk into my house on maybe at around 11:30 p.m. on an average night, my sister and I will probably be laughing very loudly about something we see on YouTube while my mom is trying to get us to go to bed. And the reason that we're not watching television or we're not listening to the radio is because it's just so easy to go to YouTube and find whatever we want instead of going through the channels. So I'm going to show you a picture. This is the table in my room, and right there is a very important part of my life. It's my phone. And I use this phone for apps, particularly my favorite, Angry Birds. Does anyone here know what Angry Birds is? I see some raised hands. I'm not to cast any bad, negative image on the character, but yeah, Angry Birds is very addictive and I love playing it. And I also use my phone for more productive things. If I have a burning question at 1 a.m. that I really need to answer, I don't have to go wake up my mom and dad, I can just run a search. And actually, it's funny, the way that I found out about Osama bin Laden's death is when I woke up, I checked Twitter, and I'm like, why is everybody tweeting? Oh, so that was how I found out. And so my phone is really this kind of integral part of my life in many ways. Whenever I have questions, whenever I want to find out information, I use the internet and my phone. And so this isn't really new that I can take information from different sources. You know, before I might be able to go to the library, check out books. I could tune into television and radio to find out about news. I could ask a knowledgeable person. But rarely, if ever, could I get the answers in 4 seconds, 5 seconds. And only now can I take what I've learned and I can put it into a tweet or a Wikipedia article or a Facebook page to share with my friends and the wider community. If I don't have a question, but I just can't get to sleep and I want to be entertained, then all I have to do is play Angry Birds or find an app. So you see how now with all these choices available, that we have sort of survival of the fittest when it comes to what we watch, what's entertaining. My older sister, Adriana, she complains a lot about things, but one of the things that she laments out most is she'll say things like, we never watch TV anymore. And with all these new options for what to do when you have free time on a Saturday night, I think it's pretty clear why this has happened. It's not because you're swamped with homework, it's because we're choosing, maybe subconsciously, to divert our attention to other things. In our household, we have, I think, 8 computers, some laptops, some desktops, 3 phones, and 1 iPad. So we have all these different things that can view content. We're among the 7% of Americans who subscribe to Netflix, and we also use Hulu and this Chinese site called Tudo, which admittedly has some pirated content, but it's very valuable nevertheless. So we have all these different sites that we go to watch television shows that we miss, to watch movies, to be entertained. And with so many devices available and all these different sites that suit our individual needs, my family doesn't really go to the living room and sit around anymore arguing for 30 minutes about what channel to be on, because we can just go to our individual computers and decide. We have this huge diversity of options, and so I understand why individual television channel viewership can be declining in many areas, is because we have all these things to choose from. But rather than treating the 21st century's new diversions as competitors, try to make them your allies. And in the process, go from the passivity and one-way learning that often defines television to participation and finding ways for your viewers, especially your young ones, to teach you and keep television evolving. I have really fond memories of television, growing up actually public service television especially, because I learned, I got very excited about reading, in large part because my parents read to me, but also because I would watch shows. Our public service television station was PBS, and so I would watch like Between the Line and Reading Rainbow and all these shows that were really interesting. So I have very fond memories of watching public service television and learning a lot. And I found that when I look back, I realized that television had a really magic power on me. When I saw the people on television, it was like a different world, and for some reason, I think this is sort of common among young people, I thought that the people on TV were literally behind the TV set, so I would peek around the corner and try to catch a glimpse of Mr. Rogers or the news anchor, and I would be very disappointed that it was only ever shadows. Yet in so many ways, the people on TV really do live inside the television set. This is what I mean. When you turn on the news at 5:30 or 6 or whenever the news is on, then you see the anchor and they're giving the news, but as soon as you change the channel and you turn off the TV, they're gone. They're not really a presence in your life anymore. Whereas your family and friends will be there, maybe either in person or at speed dial on your phone, or someone you follow on Twitter, or a friend on Facebook, or a contact in Skype. You can always get them back on demand in some way or another, usually, unless your family and friends live in very remote areas. Whereas the people on television remain stuck there. When they're off, they're off. And so it's kind of hard to compete with attention when, let's say my mom, for instance, this is her Facebook and her Skype and all this, so she's on many different screens at once. But there are shows that are trying to bridge this divide. I'm really interested to hear about the TV Lab, which some of you may know about, which presents pilots and has audiences vote for their favorites. And many of my favorite shows get the audiences to upload content or vote or call in some way and participate and shape the course of the show. A lot of the popular contest shows, a lot of the Simon Cowell ones, they have people, text in or vote somehow. But if you imagine a world where, I should use my dramatic movie voice, imagine a world where all the television shows have the audiences shape the course of the show by texting, etc. I could see where that might not be so good, because sometimes I do just want to be a couch potato and sit and watch television just to absorb information, not to participate. But other times, I feel that it's really lacking. When I watch TV, I want to be able to shape the course of the show. I want to feel like I have a voice in what happens and what I see based on what I'm interested in. And TV talent shows do well with many young people. If you think about who watches song contests and talent shows, it's a lot of times young people, because you get to text in your votes and you can talk about so-and-so's awesome performance in school. And the people on the talent show don't just stay inside this box, they emerge. You're talking about them, you're tweeting about them, you're talking to your friends on your cell phone about them. And so you're not just stuck inside the TV. And when we participate and realize that we can shape what happens on screen, we realize that the people on TV aren't just stuck there anymore. They become a real presence in our lives. So obviously I'm not recommending that you give out your phone numbers to all the youth who watch your television shows, but I do think that you can do quite a lot when it comes to learning from my generation about technology. And if you think, she's saying that this generation is just way smarter than all the other generations, no, I'm not. Although actually our IQ scores are apparently higher, but that has more to do with an enriched environment. Another story. No, it's because every generation, you think back to your childhood, there were things that you were better at than your parents, I'm assuming. There was music or art or fashion that they just didn't understand. And so today we have a lot of things like how we use Facebook or how we use instant messaging or texting that maybe our parents don't quite get yet. So today this tradition is really living strong. And so if you think about Facebook, for instance, it started out as a hub for college students to social network. And many organizations that want to keep young people as clients are catching on by creating Twitter and Facebook accounts and really becoming very active. So raise your hand if your organization has a Twitter account. I'm raising my hand because I do. Okay, so I see some raised hands. The bad news about Twitter when it comes to reaching out to young people, and I think that this is fairly true, at least for the 13, the 16-year-olds, it's pretty popular, I think, with 20-year-olds and so, but none of my friends use Twitter or like it, and the only young people that I can think of who use Twitter so that they can follow Justin Bieber and all their favorite celebrities. Facebook is definitely super popular. How many of you, your organizations have a Facebook page or account? Raise your hand. Seeing a lot of raised hands. Okay, so yeah, that's a great start when it comes to reaching out and participating, but you need to make sure that your Facebook page, and probably some of you have already done this, you need to make sure that your Facebook page is more than just a very static, here's information about our broadcasting company, or here's information about this show. You want to show young people that you're actually updating it, you're looking at what they're saying, and show that the show is maybe influenced by suggestions or comments that come in. So texting is another huge thing that a lot of people use, and there are always these stories about the teens who are sending 14,000 texts a month because they're just really into it, teachers getting responses written out with LOLs and OMGs. And when you see chats like LOL and OMG, the idea of kids using technology for social good is probably not the first thing that comes to your mind. You probably think of just kids slacking off. But if you think that young people using technology is all about writing silly posts on Facebook or chatting with our friends in abbreviated language, you should think again. Just think of the huge amounts donated to Haiti and Japan through texting. Not young people specific, but I know that a lot of teenagers were using that to donate money. And more specifically, also the huge use of Twitter and Facebook during the Arab revolutions. So there are all these examples that are really huge of change being sparked because of social networking. But I know a lot of small-scale examples as well. Maybe not changing the entire world, but definitely doing a lot locally. So I want to tell you a story quickly about someone I know. My mom ran an after-school program for many years, and this boy was one of the students. We didn't really get along, but I haven't seen this person for 3 years or so. And I opened my Facebook inbox, and I saw a message, and it said, orphanage fundraiser. So as it turned out, this boy, whom I looked to as the epitome of misbehavior, and by misbehavior I mean violent misbehavior, I saw that he was doing a triathlon to raise money for a clean water source for a Thai orphanage. And I was thinking, wow, what kind of turnaround is that? And he was using Facebook to share the event. So he was sending it out to all his friends. I was one of his Facebook friends. And then afterwards, he was using it to thank a list of people who had donated money and who had helped out. And so this is nothing groundbreaking. It's not, inventing a new tool for triathlons or something, but it's using the existing tools that are already there. And the thing is that he didn't really think about it. He wasn't having a strategic outreach team that suddenly says, we're going to use Facebook. It's just kind of natural because it's what's there. And my sister Adriana sent out her birthday invites via Facebook, like probably a million other kids. But she sent something else as well, charitable. She was asking the people who would come to her party to donate money to the world's youngest headmaster, Babar Ali, whose informal school helps children, often who are involved in labor, go to school when they might be too poor to attend. And so one of her friends said that his sister had cried when she read the story. Last September, I curated an event called TEDx Redmond, and TEDx Redmond was a conference organized entirely by kids. All of our speakers were kids, and all of our attendees were kids. So it was a very youth-driven event, obviously. We held our committee, a lot of committee meetings online. We used social networking, email, all of these things to spread the word. And this year, I'm organizing TEDx Redmond again, and my initial call to new committee members came in the form of a Facebook message. One of the speakers that I hosted last year at TEDx Redmond, Alec Lors, has been using social networking very heavily to spread the word about his I Matter March. So he's the founder of Kids versus Global Warming. And Alec Lors started this, obviously, to fight global warming. And so the I Matter March is this massive event where it gets kids to march on their local governments and in their cities to say, we matter, our future matters, do something about climate change. And so it's a little hard to see over here, but there's the Twitter and Facebook at the top, there's the Facebook page, there's hundreds of fans, and it shows organizing on a massive scale with youth involvement. And the great thing, if you think about it, about getting youth to be involved, asking young people, how can we make our Facebook outreach better? How can we attract you to become involved in in all the hours that your favorite show isn't on the air? How can you become involved online? Asking young people questions like this is good because in many ways it's sort of intuitive. We use Facebook naturally to send out birthday invites or to make people aware of our movements. And so youth-run events like TEDx Redmond and the I Matter March show that kids plus technology doesn't equal distracting chatter. It can equal genuine good for the world. You might think that kids with our famously low attention spans wouldn't be interested in heavy movements or conferences. But I found, after organizing TEDx Redmond, that there were hundreds of kids who wanted to be exposed to this kind of information, who wanted to attend a serious conference. And this taught me something else very important. Instead of creating content based on your assumptions about an audience, for instance, kids have low attention spans, or they don't get intellectual humor, or we really like gross stuff is actually sometimes true, but instead of basing content on assumptions, try to create content that you yourself would really enjoy watching. And so for me, I organized TEDx Redmond because I thought, it's a conference that I would like to go to. Just as we don't want to limit the quality of content based on assumptions about a demographic, you don't have to limit how you participate with students, with young people, via social networking. You don't have to limit audience participation through technology to simple yes or no votes. You can do great things for the world using technology and young people's energy. You can harness the participatory energy of your audience, whether young or old, to do great things for the world. In my opinion, the perfect union between TV programming and my generation can come in the form of solving social issues with engaging multi-platform outreach. Relying on television to show us about the problems and guiding us on how to help, then going online to spread the word to our friends and take action. This isn't futuristic. It's already happening. As an example, when I was in Canada, I was on the George Stroumboulopoulos show from the CBC. And on the show, I discussed the United Nations World Food Programme's Free Rice Initiative, which allows people to just answer questions, and sponsors provide rice for hungry people. It's very simple, yet very powerful. And so on the show, George Stroumboulopoulos asked viewers to join his free rice group. He posted alerts on Twitter constantly, and so his group raised over 6 million grains of rice. And it's still going strong. So he doesn't look at Twitter as a competitor. He doesn't look at Free Rice as a competitor. In fact, he just put, hey there, looking for something to do with the 23.5 hours a day we're not on the air. He's using Twitter and Free Rice to maintain a presence in his audience's lives, as well as doing good. So you see how social networking, how technology, especially driven by young people, can do so much, not only for maintaining a show's popularity or getting audiences, but for deeper things and more meaningful things, like solving global issues. Now, I've been doing a lot of talking about my generation and social networking and modern technology, but I wanted to quickly look back, because the course of history has been changed by the inventions of tools over time. There are a couple of inventions I want to mention here. So the first is one that's allowed ideas to spread, it's played a part in revolutions and wars, and yet it's really embedded into our everyday lives. So quickly think in your head, what do you think it is and when do you think it was invented? Okay, well, this invention came about approximately around the 4th millennium BCE, and we know it as the wheel. Yeah, the wheel. For all its simplicity, this invention, just imagine your life without the wheel. And there are other inventions which have allowed ideas to spread, revolutions, etc. Think of the printing press. Germans here can be proud of Gutenberg. And suddenly making it possible for bestseller to be a word. Now, I was asked here to come speak about my generation, so you might wonder why I'm telling you all this information you already know about things that were invented before I was born. Well, over time, we've seen a lot of technologies become really popular and then fade away. Nobody uses a telegraph or Polaroid cameras anymore. But the inventions that I just talked about here, the wheel and the printing press, have really stayed around. But we rarely use wooden wheels on our cars, and it's hard to find a Gutenberg-style printing press. So evolution is at the heart of timelessness when it comes to technology. But I think that we need to focus on more than just hardware and software, more than getting bigger, better, three-dimensional. We need to focus on the spirit behind the screen. In order to be relevant to a generation that does a million different things at once, you have to be able to not restrict a show's presence to the time it has on television. Have audiences, particularly youth, make their voices heard on Facebook, and make it clear that you're really listening and taking our comments to heart. With so many ways to reach out to us, you can't simply live behind the TV. So a few hundred years after the printing press came about, another invention, one probably near and dear to your hearts, is in its early days. According to Wikipedia, my generation's reputable information source, television took off in Germany. The first practical use of television was in Germany. And so, they're based on totally different ideas and for totally different things. The wheel, the printing press, and the television can all be described in the same way. They allow ideas to spread and movements to take hold. Social technology is a powerful new presence in this pantheon of new inventions. To go back to the timeline I had at the beginning, much as I like it, I have to admit that it's not entirely representative. Because I still go foraging for blackberries and playing outside as they did in the 1200s. I still watch TV and listen to radio. I still read books quite a lot. And I'm on Facebook and Twitter, and I have a smartphone. We haven't stopped asking knowledgeable people questions or reading books or watching TV just because new things have come along. By continuing to provide superior content, as well as being open to learning from youth, interacting with us in many different ways, television can not only survive, but to use a cliche, thrive. The internet allows us to upload as well as download, to have a two-way learning and sharing experience. Now education is beginning to move in this direction. Teachers are becoming more open to what they can learn from students, and youth voice is playing a part in district decisions. It's time for broadcasting to evolve as well. Let's go from top-down, passively watching everything to an approach that embraces participation, two-way learning, and ultimately viewership from everyone, old or young. Thank you.